Hello, Milena. Hi, Sandeep. Thanks for joining us. I think today's call really is more like a fireside kind of chat, a little different from typical webinars. I think really what we're here to talk about is small value cross-border payments, and really how that is going to change and revolutionize the world that we live in from a digital community perspective. All of us today are in some way or another part of digital communities. And really, I think the new frontier is how do we engage those communities beyond just social and actually financial and enabling people's lives, whether they're rich, poor, or banked or unbanked and things like that. So if I can just ask you guys to start off with a quick introduction of yourselves. Milena, if you can go first.
Sure. I started out my professional career in investment banking. I was advising financial institutions, banks, and insurance companies on M&A or IPOs. A very different banking world from what we're seeing now in fintech. So we can talk a little bit about that. Then I was in private banking for a period of time. And the last 5 years, I've been investing in startups as an angel investor, as well as advising startups, helping them with business development, strategy definition, as well as fundraising. And it has been a very exciting and eye-opening period for me because I enjoy the energy in the startup world. So I have a strong bias towards fintech. Sandeep?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Sandeep. I've had about more than 10 years experience as a product manager in the fintech space. I worked in several companies, including the Finacle product of Infosys, to PayPal, to a business-to-business payment startup called Bill.com, and the last 5 years I've been at Uber. At Uber, currently, I'm leading the payments platform at Uber. So we have a single payments platform that powers all of Uber's payments. This is billions of transactions, billions of dollars in a year, with riders trying to pay for an Uber, Uber trying to pay out their driver partners, and a single monolithic platform powers all of this in 67 countries. I'm currently the product lead of that platform.
Great, thanks. And I think just to lay the expectation, I think what's interesting about the two of you being here is we're looking at small value transfers from two very different worlds. One is, of course, with Milena from an investor's perspective, into the fintech space, and from yours, Sandeep, with really an understanding of what a global startup. Like I think we still call Uber a startup for some reason, but a global tech company today, which really has a strong representation around the world. I think Uber, at least in my mind, has been one of those companies that really was the one that started the rocket ship of startups globally. That really has it really has always been a thing that if you're an ex-Uber guy, you really were right from the beginning. But I mean, just looking at the world we live in today, especially looking in our post-pandemic life, what we've seen is a strong understanding now with people, which would have been a learning that would have taken maybe 3 to 5 more years, has really happened in 3 to 5 months, where people really understand the need for small value transfers. They understand the need for being able to move small value. Which is typically, I actually say it's a little bit like missing the forest for the trees when it comes to generally the payment and the financial services space, because that is really a huge opportunity that is yet to be untapped. It's yet to be released. So if I think just start off with looking at it from a question perspective, what is the opportunity that's being missed today that you guys see? Why is small value a hot topic? I think if you can start us off, Sandeep, from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah, for the longest time, Uber did not have what we call Uber Cash, which is a central part of Uber's money strategy or a wallet strategy. We did have what is called as a credits. We recently rebranded it as Uber Cash. But the focus was not on cash or Uber Cash or Uber credits as a payment instrument. It was still cards, primarily cards. Very recently, we have riders paying using a bank account in the United States, but its focus was if you have a card, you can get onto Uber. And if you don't have a card, you cannot get onto an Uber, get into an Uber.
Right.
This changed about 4 or 5 years ago when we introduced cash as the physical cash as a means to pay. Riders can, in all developing countries such as India and LATAM, they were able to use that. But what we noticed was that was just enough to meet the market demand at that point in time. The goal was to build people's lives around Uber Cash. And this became extremely important in the case of when Uber branched into what we call last mile transportation. So in San Francisco and in other markets, we have what is called riders can actually take what is called a scooter or a bike and go around and then get to a transit station, actually book a train ticket using an Uber app, get off at a train station, then take an Uber and go home. So end-to-end transportation solutions. What we realized quickly was when we introduced what we call bikes or scooters in San Francisco, these are $1 rides, $2 rides. Imagine charging a $1 ride on a credit card or even worse on a debit card. We realized that sometimes because of the fixed component of the debit card processing fee, the entire charge sometimes comes up to be 8 or sometimes even 10%. And in some cases, we realize that it's more than 10%. So we pay more than 10% of the ride simply in payment processing costs, which makes no sense to us. And as we expanded into buying a train ticket in several cities of United States, you can actually buy a train ticket, $3 train ticket, $2 train ticket. People are paying using debit and credit cards, and Uber as a merchant is paying huge amount of processing fees. So that's one where we realized quickly that we do not want riders or spenders, I should say, to use cards to pay for these small value transactions. And that's where the concept of Uber Cash became even more important. While it was there, you can use Uber Cash to take a $100 ride, but it becomes even more important when we want them to take a $2 bike ride. And at one point, Uber thought, we were in discussion rooms where we said, how about we make it mandatory for Uber, saying, if you want to take a bike, you can only use Uber Cash. Is that too far? Are we pushing users away from the preferred choice of whatever they want to use? But at some point, it just the math doesn't add up. The rides margins are fairly low to start with, and you take away 10% of that in payment processing costs. Pretty much the entire business of the bike or scooter business becomes questionable. That's why Uber Cash became extremely important as a fundamental source of all payment instruments can be used to top up Uber Cash, and Uber Cash can be used on any platforms of Uber. And that's the thinking that further led us into focusing on Uber Cash.
Right, and I mean that's a great learning, I think, for any company today that is trying to actually build that ecosystem for their users, is to realize that once you have a common payment layer between whether it's the rider or the driver and so forth, it's just making the movement of money really frictionless, I would say is the word to use, right? Any thoughts, Milena?
I think we've seen a lot of innovation in fintech and payment over time, but a lot more exciting things are yet to come or need to be introduced. So I started investment banking in the 90s, advising banks and insurance companies. So everyone was focused on bricks and mortar then. How many branches does a bank have? We have moved a long way from queuing at a branch to make a bank transfer or send a check by post, if you remember those days. So online banking has improved a lot. Merchant payments for e-commerce are much better. So we have so many new solutions. So that has become a lot quicker and more convenient. But what needs to get so much better, and this is the exciting part, is if we can make this small value transfers with a click of a button in real time, anywhere in the world at a very low cost. And we can currently do that to a merchant. So it's very merchant-centric, the solutions until now on an e-commerce side. But if I have to transfer money to a friend in Europe or my family in Europe, or pay for an online tuition course to a teacher that doesn't live here, it gets very expensive and cumbersome. So it is avoiding the fixed costs that we just spoke about, that Sandeep talked about, that if you make a payment through the banking system or credit cards, very high fixed costs. So small value, cheap, cross-border, There is so much more we can do with that. And I think one is doing it through and you can eliminate the banking system altogether, right? And that's the exciting part.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads into the next question that we had, which is, how does small value payments compare with overall trends in the space? And I think that's what you've just touched on, Milena, is that, there is this significant deviation now away from brick and mortar solutions. And I think you were mentioning, about how, neobanks are really replacing that space that was previously occupied by the brick and mortars. And really, what is the next wave? It really is, how do you transact, under $100? Because that really is the life that most of us live in. 99% of all transactions that we all conduct are under $100. Very
I don't
few
know
are
about
over.
you guys, but I spend a lot of time every week paying for my kids' tuitions. So I've got 3 kids. Each one of them has after school activities with numerous teachers. Even though in Singapore, the banking system now allows us to do for free transfers to people, it still requires me to log into a banking app, have the right details in there, etc. So it's not seamless. If I could do that, and if it's someone abroad, then it's not for free, right? So if I could save that time, if it could be click of a button, do it very quickly on an app that is convenient for me, that would be the dream scenario.
I want to bring up one point there. We spoke of ease of making the transfer, convenient, free. Let's start there, saying how about it's free, and send any amount of money and focus on low value. So PayPal is somewhat trying to do that. It's been trying to do that forever. I think PayPal app is in 120 plus countries, if I'm not wrong. And you can, technically the value proposition of PayPal is that as long as you are on the app and you have PayPal balance, which you can top up using any of the local payment instruments, transfer of funds between PayPal balance, irrespective of the value, whether it's 1 cent or $1,000, is free. But PayPal has been trying to focus on PayPal balance for a long time, and it is free, and they don't make technically money out of just that feature. But only 2% of all PayPal's transactions, or 2 to 3%, are between wallet transfers. So one thing that we need to think of is, why did PayPal not take off as a solution? This is exactly what we discussed. The app is in 120 countries. You can download it at a click of a button, and you can get onto it, load money onto PayPal balance, and transfer it to anyone, anywhere in the world, free of cost.
Yeah, I think the point that you bring up is the right one, because I think where the world is kind of moving or shifting is away from these standalone payment solutions and actually into the apps. So if you just compare PayPal with Uber itself, what is the use case for Uber is tremendous, because you power the entire ecosystem from end to end. Whereas PayPal is still transactional. You're still just the means to an end. You're not the actual product necessarily. And even when it comes to, how PayPal has positioned itself from an early days, it was very binary. You were either a merchant or you were a consumer. There was nothing in between. So now in the world we live in, where we have social platforms and streaming platforms, where people are sharing their own content or creating content, that's now consumer to consumer. And there really isn't a space, so to speak, necessarily for an outside payment platform to fit in. It really has to be within that ecosystem, right?
Yeah. So that's just one more point on that is this is the discussion we had in our meeting groups also, saying we wanted to build a feature of anyone can transfer between Uber Cash. I have Uber Cash, Arish, you have Uber Cash. Let's just build an international P2P remittance. It's just another transaction for us among a billion transactions. The incremental cost to our technology systems is close to zero. But people said, hey, but there's already PayPal. The challenge with PayPal is, as you just mentioned, it is not a part of people's lifestyles. On a daily basis, I will not open the PayPal app and become comfortable with it. And therefore, it's not at the top of the mind recall. I'm not sure that the other person has the PayPal app. What if they don't have it, and so on. Whereas with Uber, you get up in the morning, you got to go to work, you take an Uber. You come back in the evening, you want to eat something, take an Uber. I want to go take a bike ride, take an Uber. Right? So you open the Uber app and it becomes a part of your lifestyle. And once it becomes a part of your lifestyle, the next logical conclusion is to get you on to the financial parts of what your life is. So Uber said, we have become a part of people's transportation's lives and let's say eating lives with Uber Eats. How about we go come and a power user of Uber opens the app like 2 to 3 times a day sometimes, right? Once to morning to work, in the evening, on an average, maybe 3 times a week ordering on Uber Eats. This is what PayPal was always trying to do, but could not. Because how many times do you shop online? Maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. That's where the power of Uber app comes in, where the people are so in tune with the Uber app, they use it so much, they don't want to go to another app to transfer money. Can you do it from the Uber app? And that's the value proposition you're talking of.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that you brought that up, because that really is the differentiator, even when you're looking at the modern remittance companies today. They're all app driven, very intuitive, definitely cheaper, faster, more transparent than what you had from the banks. But all the same, if you have an app and you have an app community and someone says, oh, I've left my wallet at home, can you send me $5? And you're on a chat, and within that chat experience, you can actually send that $5, and it goes from one country to another, one currency to another. Where do you even switch apps on your single phone to actually open, a TransferWise or any other platform to make that transaction? You simply would not do that. And I think that's really the almost like the commoditization of small value transfer or remittance, is that it will eventually become purely real time and at a near zero cost. I think that's kind of the future we see. And I think just to touch on, I think this rolls into the next question, where we're talking about, social impact and financial inclusion, and where this is, changing the lives of us. I mean, one of the early stories I remember being told about Uber is that in every country that Uber, or every city that Uber is properly present, there's a drop of 80% in the call outs to ambulances. I mean, that is, something I never ever heard about Uber, and certainly would have been great PR had they done it early on. But that really shows how fantastic some of these platforms are and how they really enable the lives of people. And I think, like I mentioned in the past with you, Sandeep, I was in Mumbai at the time when Uber was really gathering a lot of speed. And I remember a guy who was, his first time using the app. I mean, he was the driver. I knew the app better than him. I was showing him how to use it. But it was fantastic because it was really a modern way of him to earn his living. It moved him away from being either a day laborer or do something very menial to doing something really quite interesting.
Yeah, I think beyond this financial inclusion of providing them a livelihood, yes, you can drive for an Uber, earn the money. What Uber realized in the last, about 2 years ago, is when we make our payments to our driver partners, they earn on our platform. Let's say they earn $100 on our platform. At the end of the week, we sweep out the balance and say, here's your $100 to your bank account. This person then takes this $100 and it's in the driver partner's bank account, let's say Bank of America, and then uses the Bank of America card to go spend this $100 somewhere. And we actually pay processors money to transfer the $100. So we have, in effect, given the $100 to the driver, and then we are not involved in the process of this person spending that $100, but we should be. And that's where we introduced the Uber driver debit card, where we said, if you have this debit card with you, transfers to this debit card is free and instantaneous. You can get paid immediately. And you know what? You can use this card and shop anywhere. So that's just one example of saying, we don't want to stop with, hey, we helped you earn $100. That's great. That was the story for a lot of years. But now we want to help you effectively spend that $100 intelligently. What if I tell you that with this card that you use, you get 30% off of fuel in any store, any gas station? What if I tell you, because of the deals Uber can sign, when you want to pay your T-Mobile or your telephone bill, it's 20% off, simply because you're using the Uber debit card. So we can make a significant impact on how you spend the $100 and increase your savings, because Uber can negotiate better rates and improve the lives of people, not just by saying, here's $100, go spend it however you want. Instead of that, saying, here's $100 and here's how you can spend $100 better and increase your savings.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's really the textbook definition of strategic innovation, right? Because one of the biggest problems that ride-hailing companies typically have is not just rider retention, but driver retention. and really, I think once you do what Uber is doing, which is to really become a part of the driver's life, whether he's moving money to his family or even paying, a utility bill, it becomes a no-brainer that he sticks with that platform. And I think that's something I've seen certainly in places like London, where you have, a high degree of the drivers for Uber are actually immigrants. They have families back home. How do they actually, send money to their families? These are real life problems that these people have. Even though they look like very small value to us, it's significant. $11 transactions, it is in some places in the world, a week's worth of food on the table for a family.
Absolutely.
Milena, any thoughts? I think you were mentioning something in the past about, the leapfrog benefit really of these kind of technologies. Right?
I think in emerging markets, we've often seen leapfrogging many stages of development. I mean, China is obviously the perfect example, where digital payments are way ahead now than anywhere else. But even smaller examples, maybe in many of the countries, developing countries, you don't need to have any digital card. Physical card. It can be all digital on your phone, and having payment capabilities through an app that you use daily, whatever that app may be, the one that you use most, because they're likely to have a phone. They may not have a bank account, but they're likely to have a phone. And if within that app that you use daily and regularly, you have payment capabilities in digital form, that can really change your life in so many ways. Of course, taking advantage of offers, as Sandeep suggested, but also just being part of the community and the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the most important things here to recognize when it comes to financial inclusion, is that even though people are unbanked, in various parts of the developing world, it doesn't mean that they don't live extremely busy financial lives. The only problem really that they face is that they're using informal channels. There's very little, if any, transparency. There's very high cost. And really that's where technology makes a big benefit. So even if you're looking at, someone who is doing dairy farming in Kenya, to actually enable that person to become a part of the entire ecosystem. So he's not just selling, his milk to a processor or a distributor. He's actually part of that entire ecosystem, and he sees where his milk is going. He sees the real value of that, and actually owns more of that value. That really, I think, is where the technology that we talk about, the digitization of these kind of old economies, really is the future when it comes to financial inclusion. I mean, even things like TikTok, if you guys have seen, yes, there's a lot of controversy around the ban that's going around. But I'm thoroughly, entertained when I see people, in rural parts of India that are on TikTok that have 1 million followers. Their lives, are not necessarily as busy or as rich as ours is in, major metros. But it is a completely new environment for them. And now if you're able to add things like financial services to those people, or enable them to, gain small values of transaction based on the content that they're creating, it's a life changer for people. And I think that definitely,
yeah. Monetizing digital followers can make a huge difference. It can completely change how people create businesses, how they earn a living. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think capitalism 2.0 is kind of upon us, right? Is that you're moving away, even tech companies today that are mostly generating their revenue from advertising. You'll actually see it more driven from the communities that they've created, the users themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. We have seen this sort of live in LATAM, where the Uber wallet concept, and if we had, let's say, solutions like Wallet Engine that had covered everything end to end, companies such as Uber or other companies may not have to do this from the scratch, because the primary focus for us is to providing financial inclusion and focus on our core businesses. It's not necessarily figure out how to build wallet in each of the countries so that there is interoperability and transfer of funds. In LATAM, especially when we spoke in several cities of Brazil. We showed them the concept of Uber Wallet, where you can store funds in the form of Uber Cash. It's a digital cash bucket, and there's a card attached to it. So you can say, I want to drive for Uber. Come on day one, 9 a.m. Sign on 9:30. You're out there. You're driving. 9:35. You finished your first trip. You can see your Uber wallet saying you earned, let's say, $10, and you can park your car at 9:40. Get out, take the card, and then buy yourself a coffee. Yeah. So from 9 a.m. to I'm not on Uber. I don't know how to earn money. To 9:40, you have a store of funds. It's not a bank account, but you have a store of funds, and no one cares whether it's a bank account or not, as long as it's a secure store of funds, and you have a card that you can spend anywhere. You can spend that funds anywhere. That is the power of financial inclusion. And several of us told us that this is the first time that they have a digital store of funds and a card to back it, because several of the banks had refused to give them these instruments because they had to put, let's say, I don't know, $1,000 as a minimum balance, right? So that's the true power of Uber. That's the true power of Uber Wallet, and that's the true power of having wallet solutions in merchant apps.
That's amazing. Yeah. Great, guys.
But also thinking about how an app, and we've talked about this before, that there are thousands of apps out there with more than 10 million users. So what can the owner of that app, or what can that app do for its own business as well as for its users? What are the new experiences or the new advantages it can deliver to it? And I think engagement can be taken to many times the level it currently is if there is financial capabilities within an app. A very simple example that I can relate to is, for instance, many of us in Singapore live in condos, so big real estate, residential properties with facilities. So there is an app that I can use to book tennis court or whatever the facilities of the condo is. How wonderful would it be if someone like Wallet Engine enables that app to do a lot more than that? Buy your food, get it delivered through the app, click of a button. The kids' activities or the lessons that they have with their teacher paid through the app. Anything else, the engagement would be so much better and really beneficial to me as a user, rather than going in and out of different payment systems. If I'm able to do everything in one app, it would be wonderful for me as a user, but also the app itself can create a lot newer business revenues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of hits the nail on the head, which is that it is really the communities that we live in today, whether they're online or in our physical space, that will actually lead us into the next generation of financial services and what those needs are. And I think people, particularly if you're looking at millennials and younger folks, they are least bothered about whether it's in a bank account or it's a digital wallet, or if it's not even called a wallet, it's just money on their phone. At the end of the day, we are in a mobile-centric world. We're not reversing that trend, in any way possible. It's only accelerating, especially with the pandemic that's upon us. That's become even more of a demand now. Is that people really want to see payments to be completely frictionless, and also once they realize it's online, they recognize that their communities are not just based on the geographies they live in. It can be someone on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I think that it really interestingly covers the various points. And I think we have gotten the two perspectives, which is, one from an investor's perspective and of course a mom's perspective. And from you, Sandeep, from the perspective of a large tech corporate like Uber. I think that's been really interesting, and thanks so much for the engagement. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Harish, for taking the time and engaging us.
I think what Wallet Engine is offering will become the next normal in a couple of years' time, if not sooner.
My fingers and toes are crossed. Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.